It's 2 o'clock. The January 22nd meeting of the Oklahoma City Traffic and Transportation Commission's call to order. Phil Tao. Dan Martin.
Present. Sorry for my tardiness. It was on 2 calendars, and I didn't look at either one of them.
Thank you. Walt Kula.
Yes, sir.
Harvey Harris.
Here.
Susan Johnston. Jolene Pittman. John May. Milford J. Clayton. We have a quorum. Thank you for your patience. Appreciate it. Item number 2, approval of the minutes of the December 21st meeting.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Martin, seconded by Commissioner Harris, to approve the minutes of the December 21st meeting. Could I have your votes, please? Approved unanimously. Item number 3 is a report on the licensed taxi and wrecker services.
Sergeant William Ricketts, the Oklahoma City Police Department Vehicle for Hire Office. In the fourth quarter of 2009, Vehicle for Hire Office they issued 30 new taxi driver permits, 39 renewals, 1 driver transfer. We inspected 21 taxis with 1 failure. We investigated 10 complaints, and we took 10 enforcement actions. We inspected 6 limousines with working 1 limo complaint. And the activity for the all other vehicle for hire, we issued 27 new permits, 13 driver renewals, 2 driver transfers, conducted 9 inspections, and investigated 4 complaints.
Thank you, Officer.
Thank you.
Any the commissioners have any questions, comments? Thank you. Item 4 is the consent docket. There are 3 items on the consent docket. Stuart.
Okay. Item 4A on the consent docket needs to be moved to items for individual consideration owing to a change in the draft ordinance. So I'd request that that item be moved and heard in regular order in the items for individual consideration.
Based on staff's request, do I have a motion to approve the consent docket with the exception of moving item 4A to the items for individual consideration?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Pittman, seconded by Commissioner Martin, to approve the consent docket without item 4A. Could I have your votes, please? Approved unanimously. We'll move to the items for individual consideration, and the first one will be item 4A. The applicant is the Municipal Counselor's Office, Municipal Code 32-319. The request is to review a proposed ordinance amending Municipal Code Chapter 32, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, by adding 32-19D in order to match the Oklahoma State statute requirements for signing parking spaces reserved for the physically disabled, and forward a recommendation to the City Council for its adoption.
Okay, this item is a review of a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 32 by amending it in order to match state statute requirements. After this item was written and included in the agenda, staff was made aware that the Planning Commission had previously reviewed an ordinance amending Chapter 59 covering the same state law requirements, and had forwarded that on to the City Council for their action on January 5th. The ordinance, staff from the Municipal Counselor's Office here to answer any questions you may have. We recommend that the Commission approve the amended version of the ordinance as presented.
Do I have a motion to follow staff's recommendation for the approval of item 4A?
Sure, I'd like to make the motion to approve item 4A as recommended by the staff.
I would second that.
I have a motion to approve item 4A with staff's recommendations by Commissioner Kula, seconded by Commissioner Harris. Is there any further discussion or anyone wishing to speak on this item? Could I have your votes, please? Approved unanimously. Okay.
All right. At this time, staff would like to request that items 5B and 5D be continued to the February meeting. The applicants in both matters have agreed to the continuation of their cases until next month.
No, 5A. I'll entertain a motion to move item 5B and 5D to the February agenda.
So moved.
Second, sir.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move items 5B and 5D to the February agenda. Can I have your votes, please? Approved unanimously. Thank you. Item 5A. The applicant is Metro Technology Centers, 1900 Spring Lake Drive, Oklahoma City, 73111. The request is to consider the installation of a mid-block pedestrian crossing on Spring Lake Drive, approximately 490 feet west of North Martin Luther King Avenue, with items 1, a passive actuated in-pavement flashing warning system, or 2, the standard pedestrian crossing warning signs with flashing warning signals. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Oh.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm Fred Quinn, architect for Metro Tech. I'm the
Thank you, Mr.
building that this serves.
When you're done, would you fill out one of these blue forms with this young lady for me over here,
Yes.
please? Thank you.
There were two options here. There was a traffic engineer engaged to help Metro Tech with this, who had recommended or discussed a passive actuated in-pavement flash warning system. And after discussions, I think the staff is more comfortable with the standard pedestrian crossing with the flashing warning signals, and the owner agrees with this. So number 2 is the option which the owner would, Metro Tech, being Metro Tech, would like to have approved.
Could I have staff summary, please?
Okay. The staff comments are before you. Given the posted 40-mile-an-hour speed limit on Spring Lake Drive, and the full expectation, that the proposed mid-block crossing location will be well utilized, staff recommends approval of the request for the mid-block crossing location as proposed, and would concur with the applicant's request that we take the staff recommendation and use a standard above-ground warning lights to mark the crossing.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation? And
I would make that motion. Go ahead and approve it.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 5A using option 2. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'd ask for your votes, please. Approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Item 5B will be continued, so we'll move to item 5C. The applicant is William Perry, 1133 Northwest 176th Street, Edmond, Oklahoma. This is in reference to Municipal Code 32-69. The request is to consider establishing all-way stop control at the intersection of North Griffin Drive and 176th Street. Mr. Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The description there may not be totally accurate. We're asking for some kind of control. I think we recognize, especially with the data that's been supplied after the traffic count, that it would be impractical to have stop signs in all directions, and I don't know that we ever sought that. What we have now is a T intersection with no control, and the problem is that neighborhood is growing to the west. If you look at the picture that is supplied, that I pulled from the packet of material, that aerial view shows the neighborhood on the right half of the picture, or the photograph, is how it used to be. People would come in from the north, head south on Griffin Drive, and immediately turn left into the neighborhood of Durbin Hills. That is only one of two entrances into the neighborhood that has 155 homes in it at this time. To the west, there where the turn is at Griffin and 176, in the last year, that vacant area has now been opened up and is being rapidly built up with new homes. That makes this a T intersection that is uncontrolled, and historically people are used to coming in and turning left. More than once, people have encountered another car coming out of the new neighborhood, and eventually somebody's going to collide. It just stands to reason. And so some kind of control needs to be put in place. By your traffic count, it's a reflection of the high car count that's coming out of the new neighborhood. It should be virtually the same on Griffin and 176, but because 176 is more than Griffin Drive, that shows there's a lot of people going between the neighborhoods, and that's where the problem is going to happen. And with the number of children that are in the neighborhood, we feel it'd be very important to not only control that intersection, but perhaps even consider, if you would, if not now, in the future, having 176th coming out of the new neighborhood a stop sign, because that gives them approximately 8 blocks with no slowdown whatsoever, and there are a number of children in the neighborhood. They already go fairly fast as it is.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. For the records, would you state your address, please?
My name is William Perry, 1133 Northwest 176th, in Edmond, Oklahoma, 73012. I live approximately 7 houses from the intersection in question.
Thank you. Staff's summary, please.
Okay. The staff comments and analysis of the intersection with respect to the city's stop control criteria contained within the report before you. At this time, the intersection does not have a traffic volume sufficient to warrant the installation of stop signs on any approach, and therefore staff doesn't have cause to recommend them. Staff does recommend the installation of a southbound yield sign in lieu of the stop controls requested, since this intersection does have a sufficient volume to satisfy the criteria for a southbound yield sign. So action on this matter is at the discretion of the Commission.
Do I have a motion?
Sir, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the staff recommendation for a yield sign going south on Griffin Drive and not approve the applicant's request.
Second.
I have a motion to follow staff's recommendation of a yield sign for item 5C. It's further discussion.
Yes, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Just looking at the map here, so on the right there, right of the star, that's the old housing area that you're talking about.
It is the existing housing area. People would come in from the top of the map and turn left at the star,
Okay.
and that feeds all 155.
Okay, and then to the left of the star is the new stuff going in.
Yes.
Okay, and as you look at, and when you look at the photo that we have, you can see the tar is different from the road, and you can see this new road. So
You see what now?
that it's a new road kind of thing going into
Correct.
that housing area. So yeah, everybody would just come down south and just make a left turn, and that was it. What is where that little arrow is here on the left?
Yes.
Is that a road there like that?
I have for you before and after kind of map.
Well, I'm just wondering that, is that a street with access? Okay. Those are new streets.
Phase 2 is after. That neighborhood is being expanded. It's going to much larger than the existing Urban Hills on the finish.
Okay, so what I'm asking, in your opinion, that traffic that's going from the left to the right, which would be, I believe, from west to east, is that correct?
Yes.
So you're saying there is a current flow going through that intersection heading to the old housing area?
Well, by your traffic count, there must be, because that's where they put the counter. But what they are doing is coming out of that neighborhood, avoiding 178, and they are going through the neighborhood to get to the other exit, which is not shown, down on Western. They're bypassing that whole intersection. They're coming out of their neighborhood rather than going there. They're going through this one to get out, to go south.
Right, and that's the 8 blocks that you're talking about?
Yeah.
That there's no stop controls?
Right. There's nothing for those 4 streets, so there's approximately the same distance.
Correct.
To the main, but it's going to be an ever-increasing issue. Any control that you put in, including the yield sign, will be most welcome.
So the concern is that as this new neighborhood, Griffin Park, grows, people will go past Griffin Drive to get to Western.
They'll go down, they'll turn right, and then down to the bottom, see where it says number 2, that's the other.
Okay.
The other, there are only 2 entrances into that area, and both of them allow you to bypass that
So
intersection.
either they'll take the first one or even the fourth one, doesn't matter.
Right.
They're just trying to get down here to Western and not have to go out here on
Correct.
178.
And if they are coming home, they're going back through the neighborhood as well, so.
So the first issue you have right now is the concern of people coming on Griffin Drive, making the turn, that there's
That they're used
no
to.
stop. But if we put a yield sign, at least that'll be that concern.
Right.
And then eventually, your next concern is going to be the amount of traffic going through the existing neighborhood.
Right. 178th in the last year has undergone major resurfacing, and a lot of the traffic was routed through our neighborhood. We have seen what that will do.
Right.
And the high volume of traffic was a concern at that time. Now that the street is back open again, the traffic hasn't gone down that much since they've opened up that other neighborhood. So there are concerns with the families that have small children. But the main thing is historically, probably for 20 years or so, people are just used to coming down Griffin Drive, turning left, going into the neighborhood.
Right.
And I'm sure that as they've experienced it here lately, they've realized they better look to the right. But it'd be nice if it were.
So, and then there's no speed limit posted, so it's the normal 25-mile-an-hour speed limit housing?
Correct.
Okay. And there's no children playing signs or anything like that out?
Not that I don't believe so.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
But, yeah, the yield sign would be great. We're grateful for that, but we'd like for it to be monitored in the future in case it becomes even worse.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Do we have yield signs on Wayne Bridge Avenue?
None of those streets that intersect with 176th have any signage whatsoever at either end. So it's all open streets.
Further discussion? Comments?
No, thank you.
The motion by Commissioner Kula is to take staff's recommendation for a yield sign at this intersection. I have a second as well. I believe it was Commissioner Pittman. Without any further discussion, I'd ask for your votes, please. Approved unanimously. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
We appreciate you bringing this to us, and if in the future you see or you feel like that this is not meeting your needs, or as the neighborhood continues to grow, then by all means bring it back to us.
Okay, I'd be more than happy to do that now that I understand, and Stuart's been helpful explaining the process to me, and I appreciate that. The traffic was at one point so speedy through there that we were tempted to take one of the temporary stop signs we found laying in the grass where they were working on 178 and fastening it to the street sign so someone would stop one of the directions. But thankfully, we won't have to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5D has been moved to the February agenda. Item 6 is comments from citizens. Is there anyone wishing to speak to to the commission at this time? Okay. Item 7 is reports and other items for all wards. This is from the Traffic Commissioners, the Commissioners' Committees, and the Staff and Municipal Counselor's Office. Staff report on the yield control installations.
Okay. As you can see there, that since the Commission's standard operating policies and procedures were changed in December, we've been able to take care of the installation of yield signs at 3 different intersections so far, which has expedited that. You've also got a report from us regarding the formation of a special taxi subcommittee to look at some of the items that require resolution coming from the City Council's taxi task force. So this gives you the opportunity to talk amongst yourselves and formulate a committee to look at these things and return a recommendation to the full body of the commission, and then from there to forward a recommendation to the City Council so they can make final amendments to Chapter 56.
Thank you. Mr. Andrews, Roger Andrews. You've got some comments on for the, I believe it's for the taxi cab issue?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, it's my understanding this has been deferred.
Please state your name and address for the
Roger Andrews. I'm with Yellow Cab Company, 107 Northwest 14th, Oklahoma City, 73103. Spoke with Commissioner Kula earlier, and this has been deferred, I believe, to the February meeting, and we're going to have some further discussions about the content, the changes, and then I guess I'll be available to speak at the February meeting after I see the latest draft.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Kula, if you'd like to comment.
Well, as we talk, and if we could just throw it out just to make sure it's real clear, some of the concerns that are still pending from the City Council and from the task force and all that has been listed by our City Council. Some of the things that we're going to be thinking about closing up on is it allowed to cruise for fares, meaning you're driving down the road, somebody waves you down.
Correct.
And talking with the current cab companies and remembering from the task force that it should still be allowed to occur. So that's one of the things that we would have to look at on this sub-task force. Should vehicles that work for tips only, example, the hotel vans that are taking someone to the airport, should that be a vehicle for hire? And I think at the task force and amongst ourselves, we're kind of thinking that shouldn't, that that's something that is a service that's given by the hotel kind of thing. It's not a vehicle for hire per se. Insurance requirements for the carriages and other motor vehicles, besides basic requirements to have a business, what we were thinking. And then finally, how many vehicles should we have in the fleet? And that's something that it's thrown out there. Some numbers that were talked about was 10, some were 25, somewhere in between. What does it take to start up a company and provide the service to the city, both the residents, the travelers, et cetera, et cetera? So I think we are in a window now between 10 and 25. That's still to be worked between the task force if it would come up. And then you mentioned one point, and it was a really good point, and I did mark it, and I was going to talk to our council. On page 8, sir, of the new one that you came up with, we pulled out and Oklahoma Corporation Commission decal. And from the two current companies, they're very concerned that maybe needs to stay there. And I can't recall what we talked about in the task force. Maybe we need to pull out some more data about why that was taken out and should it stay in. It's their opinion that proves that they have a, what was the term you used?
Well, authority that you can move from municipality to municipality in different townships, and also that meets the state insurance requirements by having the OCC authority.
We will take a look at that issue, and I'll talk to Amy about why that was stricken, and we will provide information both to the subcommittee of this body and to this body as a whole for the next meeting, so we can have that clarified.
If maybe I can ask our vehicle inspectors, do you recall that, why we might have taken that out? The OCC decal, why?
But I think it's a good idea to keep it in.
The OCC sticker thing, that we should keep that in. Okay, good. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to throw it out there. Is there anything else from you, Yellow, or from A1 that we need to make sure we get clear before we finalize this Chapter 56? You want to come up and talk a little bit? We'll have you fill out a form after you talk. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean to.
Hi. My name is Tawana Valencia, one of the owners of A1 Taxi. And I understand what Roger Andrews is saying. I'm kind of talking about the number of taxis. We started with 5, and I will grant and have fought for a few more than that. If we would have had double that, we would have been fine. I just want to say, Roger Andrews has never started a company from the ground up. I have, from infancy to where we are now. And if we put it up at 25, we have actually defeated everything we worked so hard in the taxi force to do, which is to make sure Oklahoma City has a transportation system that can cover and take care of everyone. Normal people coming in cannot come up with 25 cabs, insurance on them, paint them all, letter them all. Trust me, I know these things. And I just want us to keep that in mind, because we do need more taxi cabs in. We do need competition. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you striving to be better. And that's what we need. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would, fill out one of these blue forms, please.
Well, one last comment. The reason the task force was put together is because A1 Taxi was sitting at the airport and they weren't servicing Oklahoma City. And if you start a company of 10 vehicles, you'll have 10 individuals that go out and sit at the airport, and they're not going to, and they'll use their cell phone. They're not going to operate. You need to have a commitment. 20 vehicles, I don't think, is too many, and you can add to that number at any time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Do we need to make a motion on what to do, or?
Well, it's this particular item is being brought to us. I think we already have a taxi and our vehicle for hire committee, and I believe that Commissioner May heads that committee. So I think I would like to defer that to this committee to come back to the February meeting with a resolution that we can send on to the Oklahoma City Council. If we're in agreement, is there any commissioner that would like to participate in that discussion with I believe Commissioner Kula is on that committee now.
Well, I'm not sure on.
Do we need any others?
But I would be happy to help out and work with Mr. May in making inputs that we can all look at next February, so we can clear this up, and that way 56 can go to City Council and we can move on. Thank you,
Council okay with that?
That'll be fine, sir.
Okay. We won't need a motion for that. We'll just do it amongst ourselves then with the committee. I'll go back to Commissioner's reports. Commissioner Martin. No report. Commissioner Kula.
No, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Harris.
Nothing now.
And Commissioner Pittman.
No report. I see two gentlemen back there. Are they here on what's going on?
Please step up to the microphone. State your name and address, please.
I'm DeMarcus Thompson from Bricktown Pedicabs. And today, I just kind of want to talk to you about some of the things, proposed changes that was going into the vehicles for hire up on the carriages.
Okay.
One of the things that I see that, we had put in here is the physical. We have about 20 drivers, and most of our drivers are all college students. There's already significant costs with the background checks with the driver's record. Adding additional costs, it's going to hurt the industry in Bricktown by putting, these extra costs for the physicals. Possibly if we can do maybe a physical for specific ages over a certain age requirement, that they could be required to have a physical. Also, we're requesting that electric assisted motors, if they could be approved to be put on the pedicabs under federal law, HR 727. All of our bicycles, they're still considered bicycles, and that is already a federal law for electric assisted bicycles. Oklahoma does have a moped law that's already in effect, and it just states that these bikes cannot be over 1 horsepower for the motors. Also, we're requesting that, the inspecting carriage, if it could be, right now there's a blank for the cost of the carriage inspections. There's already significant costs in there involved for it, especially with the insurance, just alone, to even, have the business operating. So, maybe if the permit, when they go out and do the inspections, if we could not have the carriage inspection, if that could, not be assessed.
Are you looking at, I see you're referring to notes, are you referring to the...
Chapter 56 on the carriages?
Yes. At what page are you on so that we can stay with you?
Okay.
If you'll refer to those items as you move through them.
Okay. On the Article 2 carriages, 56, 202,
and what,
F.
Page 25.
Yes.
25.
Page 25. Yep.
I'm sorry, the physicals is on application to drive a carriage on 56-207, and that's under number 7. It says the applicant for driver's permit shall deliver to the vehicle for hire inspector a certificate issued by the physician of the city. Many of the personnel that drive these carriages, they are younger adults, and, they are physically fit to complete the work. So we're just asking, if maybe that could be a specific age limit put on that.
Sure. If I may ask, I don't believe this is new, is it? Is this a new requirement? Came out of the task force?
We've never been required to provide this actual physicals.
Yes, sir. A vehicle for hire. What could you say?
The pedicabs.
Yeah, the pedicabs are the only ones that are not required. Carriage drivers are not required to get a physical. So we're just trying to make it straight across the board.
So this is a change?
Yes.
So it's a change not from the task force, but from the city?
Yeah, I think it was between the police department and the municipal council's office.
Right, but it wasn't at the task force this was brought up?
Correct.
Okay, I see.
It's under
okay.
the carriages.
Got it, okay. And so we didn't change anything at the task force about carriages, did we?
No, we didn't address
So all the changes he's talking about comes about from what you proposed with the city?
Right.
And that's what he's questioning?
Correct.
And then you're bringing it up to us of concern of this?
Yes.
Okay.
I see what they're saying.
Okay, now, the pedicabs fall under the category of vehicles that work for tips. They don't have a rate schedule as such.
Right, because technically, I know with mine, we're basically a leasing company, so when we put all these additional costs on these independent contractors, they say, I don't want to do it, because, under our tax, purposes for the business, there's a lot of things that, when we go into telling the independent contractor what he has to do, as far as tax purposes, they start looking at it as these guys being employees of ours. So, I think that could be a problem for us.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to our chair to make it clear what he's bringing up. Is it our responsibility to make any more changes to this section, or is it already at City Council and it's not under our review?
Well,
that's my concern.
Based on the definition of the pedicabs, they're going to fall under the short list that you had mentioned at the very end.
Right.
Right,
the one about
that is one of the items that you have identified as should vehicles that provide their service for tips only be considered vehicles for hire because of tips are considered compensation.
Right, and at the taxi task force, we were talking about a hotel courtesy van.
Yes.
That's what we were talking about. But I can see how this may fall under that, but that wasn't what the task force was looking, okay.
Okay.
So,
And I appreciate you bringing this forward to us, because this is something that, as Commissioner Kula had mentioned, we had talked about or addressed the hotel service, but you're not affiliated with the hotel.
We're not affiliated with the hotels, but we do provide services from the hotels to the Bricktown area.
but you're not a hotel courtesy van.
Right.
You're your own thing. Well, where I'm going, sir, if I can clear up because he's bringing up about the change in the physicals for vehicle operators, which is under the case. And I'd just like to step back a little bit. Are we reviewing and we're going to make a recommendation of the entire Section 56 to the City Council, or just the final parts of the TASI task force? Because if we're only doing the final parts of the taxi task force, then it's just those 4 or 5 questions. We have our subcommittee. We provide those final answers to the City Council, and that's it. My concern is if he has all these questions and concerns about the new things that have been put in, and we're not going to provide that counsel to the city, or our recommendation to the City Council, then he would have to provide these questions to the City Council itself. Do you see where I'm going with?
Yes, absolutely.
That I don't know where we're at.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
If I could say something, though, but ultimately, by definition, it's going to encompass them if you stay with the language. Let's say you recommend that those are for tips only. By definition, they're going to fall into that. So you got to realize that.
Okay, so maybe I don't understand what he does, because do we regulate that now at all, what he does? Does anybody regulate what he does? Because that's a service I didn't know that we regulated.
Yes, pedicabs fall under the carriages section of Chapter 56. Okay, so we do regulate them. We issue their permits. Their inspections, everything. They go through licensing.
Right.
Basically the same way as a cab driver would or a carriage owner would.
Right. So the answer is no, it wouldn't, because what the task force talked about and what the City Council probably came back and asking for clarification on is, should a courtesy van at the hotel be a vehicle for hire? His product is already a vehicle for hire. So the answer for him is yes.
These new rules and stipulations will apply because
they already do.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's been changes under the carriage portion that he wants to talk about. And what I'm wondering is, has that already left our hands and is now at City Council? And in my understanding of that, I'll let the lawyer.
I'm going to defer that to council.
Yeah.
Commissioners, I believe that what the City Council is looking for is for input from the Traffic Commission on the entire set of ordinances. I don't think it's beyond your authority. I don't think it's beyond what's expected. Okay. And I think that the Council would appreciate any comments you have on any part of this chapter.
Thank you.
But by the statement from the staff, they're mainly asking for these points. But if it comes up from the business owners out there that there's other concerns, you feel that we should address those to the City Council?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Okay, so what he's talking about doesn't deal with the taxi task force that we did.
No.
This is stuff that was changed as recommended by the city staff and has been put in, and he's reacting to those possible changes.
Correct. In the task force, we dealt with just the taxi part. I mean, you have the limo section, you have the carriage section of Chapter 56 and toward the back. But at the task force, we only strictly dealt with just the taxi section.
Okay. So as we talked, Mr. May will lead a sub-task force on the taxi task force answering these questions. That was it.
Yes.
And now this gentleman is bringing up new issues of concern that wouldn't fall under Mr. May's issue, or it could, eventually, if we make it.
Well, it's been brought to our attention.
Right.
And we will, based on what council has told us, I think we need to send a recommendation out of that subcommittee to the city council. Now, he can take it before the city council as well. He has brought it to us, and we need to make a recommendation, or at least study the issue, I believe.
So his points should probably be written down and given to the staff?
That's what I think, I believe would be appropriate at
Okay,
this
good.
time.
I understand. Thank you.
Because and if you would get with Mr. Chai and document these things so that we can present them to the subcommittee that's looking into this.
There you go. Okay, so
And,
the subcommittee will just be expanded to take any other comments?
Any other questions that anybody else has.
Okay, I
about
see.
this as
Okay, good.
well. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, very good. Are you in agreement with that? Yes. Okay. If you would, before you leave, please fill out one of these blue forms for us. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to anything on this agenda or any other agenda before the Traffic Commission?
My name is David Lowndes. My questions were under the carriage licensing permits as well. We operate down in Stillwater and in Norman, and they don't quite jive in that we don't have a carriage inspection there. So I was wondering if we could maybe relax some of those requirements.
Yeah, if you would present that, your request to the subcommittee, we can make a recommendation. That's all we will be doing is making a recommendation to the city council.
Okay.
And by all means, if that doesn't satisfy your needs, then you can take it before the city council as well. Yes, if you would, sir, please fill out one of these blue forms. This lady right here has one for you. Thank you. Further discussion?
Okay, so we now have a task force, a sub-task force, looking at the taxi task force questions that weren't fixed that has to be addressed to the city council. And then now we're going to have some other issues coming up about carriages that they need to look at once they're brought in and the staff does a review working with OCPD and to figure out why those changes occurred and how it impacts and all that, and let the subcommittee look at all this and come back in February with the answers for the city council and any other recommendations that need to change from Section 56 or Section.
Yes, and I would suggest that if you feel like any of these items are not appropriate for the Traffic Commission to act upon, that you make that recommendation to either.
Yeah, they all would be. Okay, yeah, I see now.
In other words, you don't need to take on something that's not your responsibility.
Right, but all this is.
With regards to ordinances and licensing and things like that.
But we all feel that this is, that we still have, so have we ever proposed a chapter, Section 56 to City Council recently, a new one, a new draft? No? Is that something that we have to do?
Chapter 56 has not been presented to council yet.
Okay. So we can make recommendations to the staff and to the city council as needed, as has been going on.
That's correct.
Okay, good. Okay. So it may not be all cleared up by February if this thing can keep going, especially if we have new input. Okay.
Comments from the councilor's office?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Comments from staff?
I have no further comments.
Captain McCool? Comments from OCPD?
No comments.
With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.